What is happening, fish freaks? Today we're going to be talking about the hard water aquarium. And of course we all love hard water because it just makes your skin so nice and dry when you get out of the shower, and it's just such a beautiful feeling. Real quick, let's just go over the differences between KH, alkalinity, and general hardness, because we hear this a lot and we have test kits that say it's testing your KH or your alkalinity. Just to keep it simple, true KH is when it's carbonate paired with magnesium or calcium. So calcium carbonate or magnesium carbonate, and that's a true KH level. Alkalinity is anything else paired with bicarbonates or carbonates, and even phosphates and some other minerals will add to the alkalinity. And alkalinity, just prevents the pH from swinging. It buffers the water as well as the KH. It's just that the true KH, again, is magnesium carbonate, calcium carbonate. So my high-tech tank, I'm running potassium bicarbonate. So of course it's buffering the water, but technically it's alkalinity. And then of course general hardness is measuring magnesium and calcium. And a lot of our test kits, they'll either measure the total alkalinity or they'll just measure the carbonate hardness. And my local water, it's 8.6 pH, it's super hard, alkaline, 300 plus parts per million GH and KH. Totally off the charts. It's perfect for Tanganyika+Cichlids, but it's, horrible for soft, acidic conditions. And so I usually just have to use RO water. Currently, I use 100% RO DI water. But you don't have to. It's not necessary. And, in a hard water situation, sometimes you'll have to compensate for the lack of available CO2 and available micronutrients. And what that means when people say available is they may be bound and oxidized. The micronutrients may be oxidized because in the hard water, there's a lot of carbonates and hydroxyl ions, and they bind to the micronutrients, and they make them physically too large to get through the cell wall. So it's just harder for the plants to use. And same goes for the CO2. Instead of being in the dissolved CO2 state or the carbonic acid state, it's going to be in the bicarbonate form. But again, if you're pumping your tank full of a bunch of nutrients and you're pumping your tank full of a bunch of CO2, it's not really going to impact you as much. You still may have to compensate with more CO2 and micronutrients, but I'm just giving the technical reality of the science behind what's going on and why people advocate for low KH levels. And so you may have to compensate again with micronutrients. So let's just go ahead and move over to this tank that I had. This is way back in the day. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just had an Aquaterra background. I have a rangerized sword. I have some New Zealand micro sword, which is similar to the Brazil sword, but it's a lot thinner. Crypt parva, Hygrophila cormbosa compact, giant jungle val, and then some subwasser tang on the wall. So I was compensating with just dosing Flourish Comprehensive and Flourish Potassium. I found in hard water situations, you also want to dose, more potassium. Of course, the basic nutrients like calcium and magnesium, especially phosphates, usually hard alkaline water has a lot of phosphates. So all of that's going to be readily available, but there's not going to be a lot of potassium. There's not going to be very many available micronutrients, so you do need to dose with that. In this tank, I was actually only dosing Flourish Comprehensive, Flourish Excel, and Flourish Potassium. And then in the substrate, I had some API root sticks for the root tabs. And I was doing DIY CO2, but my lighting was pretty low. I only had 4 T8 bulbs, 2 Hagen Aqua Glows, and 2 Hagen Power Glows. And another crazier thing is the sand I was using was super carbonate-based sand. It was calcium carbonate-based sand from the Great Salt Lake. It's called oolitic sand, which basically it's made from the brine shrimp poop. The brine shrimp poop will actually precipitate the carbonate out of the water, and the shell grows around the poop, and it builds this really round sand. So I was growing these plants in a super alkaline substrate, and so you can see they were doing all right. If I knew more about planet tanks at the time, if I had used an aquasoil or some kind of soil substrate, I could have acidified the soil a little bit more, and I could have got some more dense growth. It wouldn't be unimaginable to think that you could carpet Monte Carlo in conditions like this. You probably can. It's probably not that hard. And again, my water is liquid rock. Real quick, it also, like I said, has tons of phosphates. So tons of phosphates in the water causing algae is a myth, because you can see I don't really have that much algae, and my tap water has tons of phosphates in it. And that being said, you don't have to do, the classic tropical fish. You can see the fish I'm using, rainbows. They come from hard-watered areas. They're a great choice. Harlequin rasboras, and then, of course, the Chinese algae eater. The cockatoo, of course, is usually from soft water areas, but he can handle the hard water because it's a stable environment. But some other fish that you can use, I want to show some cichlid love. I want to talk about some African cichlids, about Tanganyika+Cichlids. My first love, my first passion is Tanganyika+Cichlids. You could have Tanganyika+Cichlids, with this kind of sand, or of course, you could just buy the regular cichlid sand, and you could have some root tabs. Maybe get some cichlids that don't dig quite as much because they may dig the root tabs up. But more or less, you're not really going to be using plants that are in the substrate anyways. You're going to be using Java fern. You're going to be using Anubias, and those come from Africa anyways. They come from hard water streams in Africa. And they're not really going to mess with the Anubias, especially if you're using Tanganyika+Cichlids. So you could have a bunch of Anubias everywhere, tons of Java fern. You could actually get a really lush, dense look to your tank. You could even be doing a little bit of CO2, and maybe even higher light, everything like that. And then you could have Tanganyika+Cichlids, for example. You could have gold ocellatus shell dwellers that live in their shells for the bottom swimmers, and then for the midwater to top swimmers, you could do something like Cyprichromis leptosoma, and that would work out great. And so those are just some other fish that you could use. You don't necessarily have to use the classic fish, but let's just talk about a few different plants that you could use and a few different fish. So of course you can use all the Anubias, all the Java fern, tons of different crypts, Crypt walkeri, Crypt wenti, Crypt parva, most any crypt, Hygrophila stricta, Corymbosa, giant Corymbosa, Corymbosa compact, any Hygrophila, Sagittaria, dwarf sag, giant sag, Vallisneria spiralis, Italian val, giant val, Aponogeton elongatus, Kabamba, cypress, Potamogeton cypress, Potamogeton gayi, and then Cardamine lyrata Chinese ivy. So these are just a few examples. Some other fish you could use would be danios, barbs, rasboras, white cloud minnows, zebra danios, for example, giant danios. Many different live bears can handle hard water, just general guppies, selfin mollies, platies, and swordtails. And swordtails are super awesome fish. The rainbows are super awesome, and Tanganyika+Cichlids are super awesome. So once again, I'm just explaining the technical reality of it, which, it may not apply to you if you're dosing tons of nutrients. You can compensate by dosing more CO2, more nutrients. And then again, I'm just always talking about the ideal situation on my channel just to make it easier for you guys. It's not set in stone. You can do whatever you want. But it's a good example of something that you may want to aim for. But if you can't afford RO water, or it's too much of a pain and your water is liquid rock, these are just some ideas that you can use. So I hope it helps you out. I may start out a little Tanganyika tank. We'll see. I wanted to buy a rimless aquarium, but the one I wanted went from $400 up to $600. So we'll see if they go down in price again. And that's basically it. I've got a 10 quick tip aquarium videos in the work. I've just got a couple more tips to think of, and then I'm going to shoot that out. Of course, I want to do another episode in the moss series, how to grow, mosses and liverworts. But I thought I'd just go ahead and shoot out the hard water aquarium video. And I think that's it. I'm probably forgetting something. Real quick, this goes without being said, guys. I want your feedback. I want you to tell me what kind of experiences have you had with hard water aquariums. What kind of successes have you had? What kind of downfalls have you had? What kind of plants do you recommend? And for any beginners out there, this is just one, secret that a lot of us did when we first started out, is just go to your fish shop or go online and just buy a bunch of different plants. Of course, do a little bit of your research, make sure they can grow in hard water, but put them in your tank, and the ones that grow, keep them, and the ones that don't grow, throw them out. if you're just a total noob, because that's what a lot of us have done, that's what I did, you just grow the plants that work, especially when you're just starting out in the hobby, because you're just trying to learn how to grow plants. It shouldn't really be about what kind of plant you have. You just want to make it easiest on yourself. So again, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Until next time, keep your sleeves wet. Peace out.